At nearly 29,000 feet, ambition collides with reality. On these summits, hundreds pay for a chance to stand above the world, but 344 deaths have left Everest and its peers littered with bodies, unclaimed dreams, and invisible sacrifices. The true cost hides behind flags and fame, haunting every step. Just what price are climbers, and those who support them, really paying? In 1865, 4 climbers lost their lives descending the Matterhorn, a peak that had stood unconquered for centuries. This was an era when the world's highest summits were seen as the ultimate test, frontiers reserved for a select few with the means, skill, and national backing to attempt them. Expeditions were measured in years of planning and hardship, not days on a guided itinerary. Success was rare. On Everest, fewer than 1 in 10 attempts ended at the top throughout the early 20th century. Each summit was a national headline, a symbol of pride and collective ambition. A mountaineering historian describes the first ascent of Everest in 1953 as the culmination of decades of rivalry and sacrifice. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay's achievement was celebrated not just as a personal victory, but as a triumph for New Zealand, Nepal, and Britain. Their names became legends, their route immortalized. In those days, the mountain's dangers were accepted as a fact of life, not a flaw to be engineered away. To reach the summit was to enter a mythic realm, where the cost, often paid in blood, was understood as the price of greatness. The mountain stood apart not as a commodity, but as a proving ground for the extraordinary. While climbers from around the world chase the dream of Everest, a different reality unfolds behind the scenes. Every spring, Sherpa teams shoulder the burden of preparing the mountain for the season. Their work begins in the Khumbu Icefall, a shifting maze of crevasses and towering ice blocks, often called the most dangerous stretch of the climb. Sherpas cross this section more than 20 times each season, fixing ropes, hauling loads, and carrying oxygen bottles for clients who will pass through only twice. The risks compound with every trip. 2014 brought a massive ice serac collapse in the Khumbu Icefall, killing 16 Sherpas in a single morning. The disaster exposed the unequal dangers faced by those who make the mountain accessible. For many Sherpa families, the income, typically between $5,000 and $10,000 for a season, can transform their lives, funding homes and education. But the price is steep, and the calculation is never simple. Kami Rita Sherpa, who has now stood on Everest's summit a record 31 times, is both an outlier and a symbol. His expertise is unmatched, yet every ascent is a gamble. For Sherpas, the summit is not a trophy, but a job, one that demands skill, courage, and a willingness to accept risks that few outsiders ever fully see. Their labor, essential and often invisible, is the foundation of modern high-altitude climbing. A single Everest permit can cost more than $60,000. For that price, commercial operators promise not just a chance at the summit, but a framework of support, guides, fixed ropes, oxygen, and Sherpa labor. The business thrives on a simple equation. More clients mean more revenue, and a higher percentage of successful summits attracts even more bookings. Since the rise of guided expeditions in the 1990s, the success rate has climbed from under 10% to over 60%. Operators advertise this as proof of progress. But behind the numbers, financial incentives shape every decision on the mountain. Expeditions are scheduled for narrow weather windows to maximize client satisfaction, even if that means dozens of teams competing for the same route at the same time. The 1996 Everest disaster exposed the consequences, when profit and prestige outweigh caution. Guides delayed turnarounds, unwilling to disappoint clients who had invested their savings. The result was that 8 climbers died in a single storm. Today, the promise of safety can be as much a product as the summit itself, sold to those willing to pay the price. On summit day, Everest's narrow ridges become a human bottleneck. Hundreds of climbers move single file above 8,000 meters, each step slowed by the person ahead. The problem is not just the number of people, it is the timing. Most teams target the same handful of clear weather days, creating a surge that the mountain's thin trails cannot absorb. That day, 2019, a photograph captured a line of climbers stretching along the Hillary Step, each waiting for their turn to touch the summit. More than 200 people attempted the top, with delays of over 2 hours in the death zone. Oxygen tanks drained faster than planned, muscles stiffened, judgment faded. A veteran guide describes the challenge of managing these jams. You can't turn back a line of 50 people when everyone's paid to reach the summit. But every minute you wait, the risk grows. The pressure to keep moving forward, driven by cost, ambition, and the promise of success, turns the world's highest peak into a place where survival is measured not by skill, but by the ability to outlast the crowd. Above 26,000 feet, the human body enters a zone where survival is measured in hours, not days. Oxygen levels drop so low that even simple tasks become exhausting. High-altitude physiologists describe this threshold as a place where judgment falters, muscles waste, and fluid seeps into the lungs and brain. Climbers may forget their own names, misplace their footing, or hallucinate shapes in the snow. Supplemental oxygen can buy time, but it cannot reverse the damage. Most fatalities, now totaling 344, happen here in the death zone. Rescue at this altitude is almost never possible. Helicopter pilots like Maurizio Follini have managed rare extractions, such as his long-line rescue at 7,800 meters in 2013. But he calls these attempts a last resort. Follini says every second up there is a calculation. The margin for error is 0. Above this line, even the best technology cannot overcome biology. When a climber collapses in the death zone, the mountain often decides who comes home and who remains out of reach. Climate change is carving new dangers into the world's highest peaks. Glaciologists studying Everest have measured a loss of more than 54 meters, about 180 feet, in the thickness of the South Col Glacier over just the past 25 years. This thinning, driven by rising temperatures, has destabilized the very ground climbers rely on. Ice that once held the mountain together now melts away, exposing loose rock and creating sudden avalanches. The Khumbu icefall, already notorious for its shifting crevasses and collapsing seracs, grows even more unpredictable as meltwater weakens its structure. These changes are not gradual. They unfold within a single generation, turning familiar routes into hazards that no amount of experience can fully predict. A leading glaciologist warns that the mountain is not just higher, but more violent, its face altered by forces climbers cannot control. The risks are no longer only a matter of altitude or skill, but of a landscape in flux, remade by a warming world. Every climbing season, Everest accumulates not just footprints, but a burden that lingers long after the last summit photo. Estimates suggest that 10 to 20 tons of trash, including torn tents, empty oxygen bottles, and food wrappers, are left behind each year, despite organized cleanup campaigns. More than 200 unrecovered bodies remain on the mountain, stark reminders of the risks that cannot be swept away. A veteran guide, after decades on the world's tallest peaks, questions whether reaching the summit is worth the cost. Success should mean coming home alive, not just planting a flag. Historians point out that the definition of achievement has shifted from survival to statistics. Some propose stricter permit caps or minimum experience requirements to reduce the human and environmental toll, but change comes slowly. The mountain reflects not only ambition, but the values and choices of those who climb and those who govern access. As the waste piles up, so do the questions about what it means to truly succeed. As climate change destabilizes the world's highest peaks and demand for summits grows, risk shifts from mythic challenge to a calculable, commercialized cost. The mountain's real price is paid in lives, labor, and a rapidly vanishing landscape.